And then just add this stream of people whose books and columns in magazines I'd read started coming in. And I was like, oh my God, why am I here? All these people are just, world-renowned experts. And they put you at ease and you gradually get used to it and you find yourself working with them as a peer.
Hello, Sean. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me on.
All right, all right. Very excited to have you on. This is one I was really looking forward to, and I'm sure the people will as well. I want you to explain exactly who you are, and just give the people a short synopsis of, where you work, what you do, and your experience, things of that nature.
Sure. Yeah, so Sean Corfield. I'm a senior software architect. I've been in that role at various companies now for about 2 decades. I work for an online dating company right now, and we have about 40 dating sites in over a dozen languages and a global community of users. I was fortunate enough to get started with programming when I was a kid. My dad bought me a programmable calculator, and I was instantly hooked and thought the ability to tell computers what to do was just fascinating. Um, I went on to do math and computer science and got to learn a lot of fun languages at university, and that sparked my interest in languages. So when I got started in industry, I actually worked on compilers and runtime systems and test suites and got involved with standards. So I was on the C++ ANSI standards committee for 8 years in the 90s. And then kind of gradually drifted into web development because that's what a lot of the companies and clients I was working with were doing. And finally ended up in the US. I was born and raised in the UK. Ended up working for Macromedia for 6 years and Adobe for a year as their senior software architect, overseeing all of the large internal projects at Macromedia. Then I went freelance for a while and was mostly advising people on coding standards and architecture of systems, and then ended up at the dating company where I've been for the last decade. So I've been enjoying that.
That's amazing. So, you have quite a robust experience. So if we talk about the C++, how was that? How was it like to be, what was it like at that time? How did
It
it
was a
evolve?
really interesting time. I mean, I got involved with the standards stuff in very early 92. And I got involved initially at the British Standards Institute, just because I was working in compilers and language systems. And fairly quickly, once I'd been attending meetings there, I got voted to be the principal UK expert on the ISO committee at most of the meetings through the 90s. And then I decided to join WG16, which was the ANSI C++ committee, and work on that. And so it was really kind of interesting to see how the sausages are made. Working behind the scenes, actually looking at language features, trying to figure out how to specify a language feature. And of course, back then, early 90s, Straustrup's book it covered the basics of the language, but there were still some language features that were in design. So templates were still being worked on a lot, namespaces were being worked on a lot. And so a lot of the stuff around that was things we had to kind of go in and design and figure out how they should all work. And talk about a room full of like just crazy smart people. It was amazing to work with them. My very, very first meeting, I went into the ISO meeting, which is always the night before the main meeting, and sat down at the table, and this tall, slim guy across looked up from his book and goes, "Who are you and what are you doing here?" And I said, I'm Sean Corfield. I'm the UK representative this year. And a guy at the other end of the table said, "Oh, don't worry about him. That's Doug Brook. He's like that with everyone." And introduced himself, and it was Sam Harbison. And then just add this stream of people whose books and columns in magazines I'd read started coming in. And I was like, oh my God, why am I here? All these people are just, world-renowned experts. And they put you at ease and you gradually get used to it and you find yourself working with them as a peer. on some really, really hard problems. And I found that that kind of pattern repeated as new people joined the committee, because they would come to it from their companies as a rep, and be very much like, oh my God, look at all these authors and world-renowned speakers. And then they'd settle in, and you'd find, various people would be leading various language groups. And it was a really interesting experience for someone who has an interest in languages as I do.
Absolutely amazing. So that's a very rare opportunity. And what I got from that is what it's like to work with like really smart people, what that experience is like. Because, a lot of people who are joining, and, I always advise them, hey, if you can find a group of people who are very smart, try and join them in whatever way you can. It will just enrich who you are as a person and how you work. So, could you talk a little bit of, sort of exactly what it was that made it, um, you know, so enriching? Like, what was your experience with that, especially at that level?
Well, it was definitely very interesting for me, because you had obviously Bjorn Stroustrup, who, the creator of the language, and there were parts of the language that he had not yet fully specified. And so as a group, we broke down into little subcommittees and focused on different features of the language to take his concepts and ideas and then fully flesh them out into a specification that compiler writers could actually implement. And sometimes they had to change a fair bit, sometimes they just needed additional specification. Um, but it was also interesting to see how the different compiler vendors brought their own opinions to the table, because some compiler vendors had pretty entrenched positions on some of the language features. And they'd say, well, we've implemented it this way, and we've got, thousands of users of our compiler that use this feature, and now you want to change it. So we're going to argue against that. We're going to vote against this change to the language. And you had to find a way to navigate through that. So I learned a huge amount about working with groups of people, coming to compromises, trying to reach consensus. Sometimes there's just no good solution to a problem, so you have to pick the least worst solution. Um, and I stayed with the committee until the late 90s, and then began to get very interested in Java, which was sort of the young upstart, and in fact started to do more work with Java and began to really enjoy it. So I drifted away from the C++ committee and stopped using C++ by pretty much the end of the 90s.